Welcome to Corinne's Picks. I am your guest host, Katori Walker, and today it is my pleasure to have with me Courtney Minor. Hi, Courtney. Thank you for coming.
Hi, I'm really happy to be here.
Now, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So, I am a interdisciplinary artist. I focus in on collage and graffiti, as well as I do a little bit of assemblage. I do a little bit of sculpture, a couple of different things. But yeah, I've been leaning a lot into street art since I came back to Jersey City.
Well, I also heard that you are a fellow.
Yeah, I am.
When did that happen?
Yeah, so late last year, I decided to just randomly apply for the New Jersey State Council on the Arts fellowship program. I thought it was a long shot, and then I got the news earlier this year, maybe a month and a half ago, that I was selected. So I beat out quite a few people, and I'm really excited about it. I'm now a 2024 fellow, so I'm that throughout the whole year, and I also received a grant.
Now tell us about Sachi Arts. She has so much to talk about. So that's something that happened as well.
Yeah, so the beginning of this year, it was very haphazard. I got the announcement that I was named one of the top, I think for Sachi, the top 15 collage artists or Black American artists for Sachi Art Worldwide. And then Singular Art also named me as one of the top collage and Black artists on their gallery website as well.
So a lot of things have been happening for you.
Yeah.
And you do so many different things, and you do residencies as well. So
Yeah.
your work is not just here
No.
in America.
No.
It's around the world.
Yeah, I'm thankful for the residencies and for Singular Art, especially in Sachi Art. I sell my paintings all over the world. My residency recently, I've had a few, but I just got back from France, from Chateau Orgevaux. It's run by Ziggy and Beulah, and if they're watching this, I love you both.
Yes.
I made several works there because it was really inspiring being near at that chateau in rural France, 3 hours outside of Paris. And I made a piece called The New Humans, which is a new style that I developed while I was there at the chateau.
Well, let's get into it. We're going to
Yeah.
take a look at some of your work,
Yeah.
and we're going to have the opportunity for you to discuss your vision and how it came to life.
All right. Ooh.
All right, so this piece right here, what is it called?
This one is a queen on her throne. I made this during my residency here in New York City. I was with Art Crawl Harlem with Ulysses, and we were down at Governor's Island, and I was challenged with a theme for that residency, and that was boombox, because it was for Hip Hop 50th. Typically, my works are rooted in memory, so I was trying to grapple with how do I address the theme while also addressing my work. And what I came up with was focus in on certain songs that were my favorites in hip hop, and then tie it back to the memories of when I first heard that song. And that translated to this work where when I first heard The Next Movement by The Roots, which is one of my favorite hip hop songs, I felt like I was just floating above the world, and I always felt like I was just on a throne, or I was sitting on many waters. I just love that. So most of the works I created along with this one around, as well as the rest of the series, kind of shows a play on scale. So I use newspaper print to create a lot of my collage pieces. I know it's an unusual medium, but it worked best for what I was doing. And then I did my own photography using my imagery, as well as using construction paper, paint, acrylic, gold flecks, found objects, and created that work.
Now, when you do this work, like this piece we just saw, is it something that's coming from your imagination?
Oh,
Do you dream it? Is it something? How does that process work?
It's a little bit of both. It's very organic. That you see how I'm doing my hands. I almost feel like it's timey-wimey. Because I have very vivid imagination and vivid dreams. And then sometimes it will just hit me like a thunderbolt as I'm working on the piece. And with a lot of the works I created on Governor's Island, it hit me when I was just in my zone, in my moment. But I would say that it comes organically from the dreams that I have and how I translate that to reality. And I always feel like it's pouring out of me, which is why I end up making so many works all at once. Some people think it's crazy, but I'm like, I kind of get into the zone and I can make up to 20 maybe even 30 works in one sitting over a 3-week time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. Next image. All right, look at this one. Oh, I
love this
absolutely
one.
love this one. And I see that you have like, so what are those rays meaning coming out from the side?
So this work is called Doll Doll Flow. It's one of my favorites. It's actually on display now during my solo exhibition at Kente Royal Gallery in Harlem. Like, it's literally on display now. This work is very special. So after I made my body of work at Art Crawl Harlem, I was playing with this idea of graffiti, but hidden in plain sight. So the gold rays that are coming from her hands, if you look closely, like if you look at the top left-hand corner, it says Doll Doll Flow. And then it talks about how she's a daughter, how she's gonna be a star one day, how she's an old soul, how she loves rhythm, and she has spice, and she has style. So I use the gold ray to describe the subject that's in the center, because I always typically pick people that I know or people that I'm drawn to when I'm in my travels, and then I get to know them better so that I can actually create my graffiti around them. What's interesting about this work, though, is the white background isn't actually white. So if you turn on a UV light, I have a whole bunch of hidden graffiti behind there, and that's my stream of consciousness writing that I do as part of my art therapy.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so how long did it take to create that piece? Did you do it in layers or did you actually do it in one sitting?
No, that one took a while. The whole body of work took a while because I had to not only create the newspaper print, which was the individual, which I had to do digitally, and then print it out on newspaper, and then cut the giant piece and make sure it didn't cut or fold. I had to source the chair image that she's sitting on from the Smithsonian, their open database. Then the UV paint, it's actually not paint. So what I did is I got UV glue and I added UV ink. So think about when you go to the club and they stamp your hands so they know that you can get in and out. I used that same ink and amped up the glue. So the graffiti I have painted on the white background is actually me painting with glue.
Oh,
Which as a
wow.
collage artist, it's like the best of both worlds. Because
Yes,
you can glue the image and you
absolutely.
can paint with it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, lots of layers. Even when you look at the blouse that she's wearing, that blouse, I always tell people to look closer because in the body of the blouse, you see images of her family. You see cut up pieces of paper towel that I hand dyed. And the towel is significant. I try to put that in a lot of my works.
Okay.
So I alluded to art therapy. I went through a lot of significant family issues where I had deaths in the family. In the process of my grief, I often would, cry into a paper towel. And so I tried to keep as many of those paper towels as possible. And then I've hand dyed all of them because I had a stack because it was a rough year.
Yes.
And I just tear pieces from that stack and I embed it in my work so that a piece of me somehow is always in the works. Even if all of me is in the works, but it's really in it. It's like my actual tears are in the paintings.
Well, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
And how you use that therapy creatively by crying your tears into tissue and using it in your artwork.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Next image, please. Okay, what's the title of this piece?
This is Learning from My Brother, and it's influenced by the next movement by The Roots. So that is a picture of me and my brother. This is what I was just mentioning about how I play with scale. So the image on the left and the image on the right are giant pieces of newspaper print, but they're my own photography because I do all my own photography. Inside the shirt, if you were to zoom in on it, you'll see that there are photographs, like Olin Mill photographs. It's me and my brother when we were very young, and I digitally altered it and then made it into collage pieces, cut them up in strips, and rebuilt the shirt. And then in his pocket square, where it would have been as a pocket square, that's me as a baby. Because my big brother, well, like he's my heart. And I feel like, well, I'm going to be close to your heart. So I put myself right there on that pocket square. And same with my blouse, I have him in it as well. And it's just us integrated together. And the reason why this is significant is my brother is back to Hip Hop 50th and Boombox. He taught me everything I know about hip hop. He's the one that introduced the Roots to me in his car in an Altima, which is in one of my other works. We were sitting in our parents' driveway because we weren't allowed to listen to hip hop in our house. And so we would play it in his car, and he would just go through record and CDs and cassettes, everything one after another. And again, it felt like we were floating on top of the world in this secret little dome. And that's how that work came to life. And all the photography below it is my own photography from my rooftop and other rooftops throughout the city of New York.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Next slide, please. Okay.
Perfect segue. So this one, Standing on Top of the World, that is the Ultima that I referenced from the driveway. So that's the image of my brother's actual Ultima. It was a green Ultima. I printed out in a big newspaper sheet and layered it, and then I added tick marks, and all of my graffiti is in the black, and layered up, and then I built on top of it and covered it all in black, so that you could really focus in on the center image.
So is there like texture to this?
Oh, there's tons of texture. Like the image is not doing it justice. If you see the canvas in person, it's like ripples and cuts and spikes, and it's supposed to represent just that gritty feeling that you get from hip hop, especially the beginnings of hip hop. Now it's a little bit more refined, but it's still there. Like when you think about going from, Africa Bambaataa all the way through to Common down to the roots, I wanted to capture that feeling, like, they're just standing on top of the world like they did with their boom boxes. So.
Okay. Next image.
One of my first works. This is Heartbeat of Fatherhood. So this features a good friend of mine. His name is Greggy. And every time I saw him, he was just the epitome of a father. He was just so proud of his son. And I always wanted to do a portrait of him. This is when I was very first starting out, and I was actually scared to ask people to sit for me. Like, I was terrified. And I remember really nervously asking him, hey, will you sit for me? And just talking to him about the love of his family and the love of his son, I wanted to capture that. Yet as I was talking to him, it just felt like his heart was boom, 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 beating. As he thought about his son, he got very excited. So on his chest, I capture that heartbeat. I didn't want it very literal. I wanted it a little bit more metaphorical. And then his entire shirt, the explosion coming from his face represents him thinking about his son and his next steps. But the body of his shirt, you'll see images of his son and him throughout the entire body of it. So each of those pieces of his shirt are tiny little torn pieces of my photography on computer paper that I hand glued to rebuild his body.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is absolutely amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, we're going to take a quick break right now, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Corinne's Picks, and I'm here with Courtney Minor. Hi, Courtney.
Hey, hey.
It has been such a pleasure having you here on the show. And one of the things I wanted to ask you is, in your work, there's a lot of emotion and a lot of passion. How does things that happen in your life affect you with your artwork?
Oh, it's direct. So a lot of current events, emotional turmoil that happens in my life, I have to release it, and I often release it through my art. So it's almost, I won't say instantaneous, but it's very correlated. Like within a few weeks or months, I'm making a painting about whatever emotional high or low or in between that I have felt. It's integrated.
Well, we're going to take another look at some of your pieces. Next piece, please.
Oh, talk about emotional.
Yeah.
This one is called Dad the Unreadable. It's about my father. I miss him dearly. At that time, he was still alive, but he passed away about 2 years ago. And my dad was a complex man. I'm a lot like him, but we're also very different. And I got my inspiration for my collage exploding heads after observing him, because I felt like his head was exploding with thoughts and imagination and plans within plans. He was the consummate strategist. And even with all of those thoughts exuding, I still have a hard time reading him emotionally. He had a very good poker face, so that's why I called it Dad the Unreadable, and I miss him.
When I see that piece, I see so much happening. It's almost, I see like this chaos kind of,
Yeah.
but then with the blue colors, I see a calm. So it's sort of like two things happening at the same time. Was that how your dad was?
That's how my dad was, and that's how I am. So oftentimes I put a little bit of myself in my work. So I have controlled chaos. It's not, some people say, oh, you shouldn't say chaos, that's a bad thing. And I'm like, no, I think a lot of people don't like to admit sometimes the conflict that's internal to them, and I don't try to hide that. And it comes through in my work.
Next image, please. Oh, yes. I love this piece.
Yes, yes, yes. Forgiveness, forgiveness, forgiveness. This one I made the same night as my worry, anger, systemic pandemic. I was very emotional that night. That was the night that George Floyd passed. I was up all night watching CNN, and I first made the first painting because I was just so scared about the men in my life, the people I loved. And then this one was about how do we evolve past the anger to forgive, and how do we exemplify that? So I have a lot of tears on this painting. The red drips represent tears of blood. And it represents people that are either suffering loss or have lost. So there's a lot in here. I could talk about this for days.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not going to do that.
Okay. Well, I do have a question there. Now, is that graffiti in the background as well?
Absolutely. So the same painting that I had before with the white background, it's the same style of graffiti that's on here. It's just this is done with gold paint. So a lot of my black paintings, I do gold graffiti, and then I overlay it with what they call interference paint. And then that's why you can see the word human written across even the graffiti and across the collaged objects, because it was about screaming, we are human. This is our humanity. Like, see us as human. And I wanted that to go through because I felt like that was screaming out of, I screamed it in my apartment that night. I screamed it for months, like, see us as human. And that's what came through. Forgive them. Please forgive them, Father. And that is part of a scripture, of course. From my background, I know the Bible, so yeah.
Next image.
This one doesn't have as much depth behind it.
Is this one of the ones that you kind of just did?
Yeah,
at the
so
moment?
I made this last year, right before I showed at the other art fair. And I just had this bright idea one morning to do my own drawn figure, which normally I use a collage figure. This one I actually hand drew this and then rebuilt and built the figure purely organically. And I literally did stream of consciousness on here, and I felt like I was on top of the world. I was like, ooh, new horizons are beckoning. Don't be afraid to change. And that's literally what I wrote. New horizons beckon, answer the call, recognize what is necessary, do not be afraid of change, do not hesitate. So it's a very joyful painting, and I'm happy to say this was just acquired last week at Kente Royal Gallery.
Congratulations.
Yep.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so happy for you.
Thank you.
Ah.
And this also became a mural. So this was a pop-up mural at a fair last year. So yeah, it's a good one. It's a quick one, but it's a good one.
Next image.
Ooh, this one has a lot of stories. So background on this one, I made 3 paintings. Yeah, 1, 2. I made 3 paintings. I got a commission from Gap Brand, and they wanted me to design a Black History Month shirt. I gave them 3 to 4 options of paintings that they could put on the shirt. The one that was chosen was called Black Future is All of Us, but this one is called Black Future is Male. And the idea about it was my graffiti would be telling a story, because during that time period, this was right after all the social movements across the United States, there everyone was asking for, well, tell us more about Black history, educate us. And I was like, no, if you want to educate yourself, look up these people and educate yourself. That's what Google is for. I was tired of having to teach. You can learn from the painting. So several people who looked at it realized, you know, Nat Turner, W.E. Du Bois, Duke Ellington, Thurgood Marshall, the Million Man March, James Baldwin, Barack Obama, Basquiat. Like, if you see the names, I said, go in and Google them. So this particular graffiti, I purposely made it very easy to read and legible so that those could use it as education to learn. Sometimes I make my graffiti illegible, and sometimes I make it legible. For this one, it's education, so I wanted my viewers to be able to read it. This one's also acquired, it's gone.
Oh, wow.
But
Now, how did you get into graffiti? I understand you were introduced to hip hop, but how did you navigate into graffiti?
Ooh, it's emotionally rooted. So it goes back to that same night watching CNN with George Floyd. I was sitting there literally crying my eyes out seeing Minneapolis burn. And just, I was crying more because I was feeling the pain of everyone in the country. And as I was creating my collages, because I just feel like I had to do something with my hands, I kept feeling like my collage wasn't saying literally what I needed to say. And the only thing I could think to do was pick up a paintbrush and start writing it. That was the beginning of me doing graffiti, right there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Next image, please.
Magritte. This one's gone now as of 3 weeks ago. This one is a slightly different take on my graffiti. So instead of doing an education lesson, this was a dream. So I have a running list. I can't believe I'm telling you this. I have a running list that I've had for years of my dream dinner party. And on there, it's a list of historical figures, both alive and not alive, that if I had a dinner party at a table that went for miles, who would be sitting there?
Yes.
And I had Magritte, but also embedded in here, I have several other people that are sitting at this particular dinner table that night or that evening or that day. And the words around the people's names embedded in this painting is the conversation we were having at the table.
I love it.
So yeah, this one's very interesting. So I always make the first name very legible, and then I hide the other people in the painting as you go further down. But you'll see that I'll give away one. There's Frida Kahlo in there, and there's a few others. But enjoy looking at that. I like people to be surprised with who I have invited to my dinner table. And I have several pieces in this vein. So I have a long list.
Well, is my name in there? Am I invited?
You might be in a list. You might be. You
One
might be.
day.
I'm not gonna. I never really tell. I like to see if people figure it out. So you never know.
How big are your pieces normally? How big do they run?
I do little ones during. I should be clear. During COVID, I did 20-inch by 16-inch because that was all I could get my hands on during the pandemic, at least for me. Now I go up to about 10 feet by 8 feet. My average paintings are usually around anywhere from 36 to 48 inches, which are quite large. And they width are about 24 inches to like 36 inches, so pretty large.
Okay. Next image, please.
Oh, Chateau. So this is one of my new styles. I just developed this at Chateau Orgevaux when I was in France. And I wanted to play with surrealism quite a bit. And I wanted to play with, what if I did unique imagery using the new form, but in unexpected poses, and juxtapose that with the imagery that I felt when I was at Orgovo. Like, I was like, how can I capture the pond without putting a real pond on there? And that's when I did the gradient. And I do gradients all the time just for fun, like in my sketchbooks. And I said, well, what if I combine these two? And so this was one of those, the best accident that can ever happen. I just made it thinking, oh, this is not going to turn out good. This is not going to turn out good. And it ended up being my most favorite work.
Beautiful, yes.
So now I'm making several others like that in my studio, and they haven't been released. But this one, I gifted to Chateau Orgovo, to their gallery there, to the Denis Diderot gallery.
Okay, let's go to our next image.
Crystal. This is Crystal with the golden hair. So the little girl you saw before, Doll Flo, that's her mother. Because I do families often. And it's the same style, except I have her sitting on a green chair throne with the halo behind her, the crown on her head, because that's the queen she is. The words at the bottom are talking about her as a mother, as a person, as a fashionista, because she has some of the best style you ever want to see. And then the UV ink, which of course you can't see it on this picture, but when the UV is on, it's just my stream of conscious, like, thoughts and rumblings on motherhood, being a daughter, having homesickness, missing my family. Because that's why I created this series in the first place, my family series, Familial Haze, because I was homesick. I missed my family.
Okay.
So I was like, well, let me go honor families that are my chosen family here in the East Coast. And that's how this came about.
Now, I noticed that you use either a white background or you use a black background or whatever, those solid backgrounds, and then you'll work with it. Is there a reason why that you do that?
It is. So with my black backgrounds, I kind of think of it as just like a black hole, like you're floating in nothingness. And that's how I felt these last few years. I think we all felt like we were just kind of caught up in this vacuum. And my idea was, what if we got caught in the vacuum and then paused and stood still? And that staying still is that square image I captured when I made my painting. And that's how both the voids feel, because whether you're in a white dwarf, I'm very into science fiction. I'm very into stars and galaxies. So I love white dwarfs. I love black holes. I love the ideas of them. I wish I could see them. And I tried to capture that in my work, even though it's not overt.
Okay, okay. So one last question I have for you today.
Yeah.
How long have you been doing this?
Not long.
Since the time you were born, you just birthed out and started?
Not at all.
Just tell
So I've done it. Well, I'll give the full story. I started off doing just pointillism in school when I was like in grade school. And then I moved on and started doing it professionally 5 years ago.
Okay. Well, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for being on Corinne's Pick.
Thank you.
I am excited that you came here today.
It's been great.
I am Katori Walker, and thank you for watching.
Thank you.
I'ma show you how to party.